And hello, everybody. Vasu Vadaparty here with the VPartySports podcast. We're sponsored by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose, live broadcast every Sunday from 9:30 a.m. Pacific time to 10:30. The first half with sound inside the restaurant. Mention the podcast if you join us on Sunday live. Receive 10% off your entire bill. Don't forget to check out happy hour specials. All the NBA, NFL, NCAA basketball is now started. NHL as well too. Also DJ music going on during the week, but everyday happy hours, and then Saturday college football, and Sunday we're there live with the broadcast and the 10% off your bill, the entire bill, including alcohol, for the NFL Sunday ticket. All right, let's get to it. First of all, Monday Night Football tonight, the Philadelphia Eagles at 8-0 are going up against the Washington Commanders. They are 4-5. Game on ESPN tonight, 8:15. Eagles 8-0, come in. Highly physical game. This is going to be a very physical game against the Washington pass rush. Eagles offense is 14th versus a Commanders defense that's Eagles offense is 4th versus the Commanders defense that's 14th. However, the Eagles have a third-ranked defense against the 25th offense. Second in offense for Philadelphia, third in defense in points allowed. Philadelphia 4-0 against the spread at home. They're 5-3 overall in their 8 games, but 4-0 against the spread. And of course, they beat the Commanders early in the year, 24-8, a game in which was very physical. Philadelphia got up to a 24-0 lead, and then a safety, and then a touchdown, a failed 2-point conversion led to the final score. That game was the Eagles 5.5. Let me find it here. I saw it earlier. It's 5.5 that they won by. Well, the spread was 5.5 and 47.5 was the total. So they covered the game. They stayed way under the total. Tonight's game, Philadelphia minus 11, probably the extra 3 points added on for the home field advantage. We said they're 8-0. They haven't lost yet this year. 43.5 points the total. Some of the close games that they've had. The first game of the year against the Lions was very close. They beat up on the Vikings, the Commanders. Jaguars was close. Jaguars covered that game. The Cardinals covered against the Eagles at home. The Cardinals were at home. And then they beat up on the Cowboys. They beat up on the Steelers. They did not cover against the Texans 2 Thursdays ago, and that's the last game. So they've had 10 days off going into this game. Meanwhile, the Commanders, physical defense, we know that they've had a rough go of it offensively. The quarterback injury with Carson Wentz, Tyler Heineke, who was the superstar, wasn't the superstar, but was the all-everything 2 years ago that led them to the division title, led them to a near upset of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs. Their games, they beat up on Jacksonville early in the year when Jacksonville came out as the hot team. They were an underdog there. The Lions, they beat up. They lost at Detroit to the Lions. They lost to Philadelphia. The Cowboys, they went to Dallas, got beat up by them. The Titans came back on Washington to win that game 21-17. I believe that was one of the games they covered. No, that was an even game. Washington lost that game. The Bears, that was the ugliest game of the year, was the Bears game. I know, I'm a Bears fan. I've said this thousands of times. The Bears should have won that game, but at a pick'em, 12-7, the final score there. They beat the Packers. They beat the Colts. They lost to the Vikings, and we'll get to the Vikings in a second, but they played the Vikings very tough. They were a 3-point underdog. The game ended up at 20-17 on a game-winning field goal by Joseph to give the Vikings the 20-7 victory. So now they've got the Eagles tonight on Monday Night Football. The previous game, let's go through some of the previous game box score that we had. Jalen Hurts threw for 340 yards. He threw for 3 touchdowns. Sanders and Hurts combined for 66 of the 72 yards. Devontae Smith went off. 8 catches, 169 yards, a touchdown. 3 different receivers scored touchdowns for Dallas. That was Smith, A.J. Brown, and Dallas Goedert. Goedert got him going with the touchdown there in the game. The Commanders got their lone touchdown on a rushing touchdown by Gibson, but it was 24-2 at that point. They went for a 2-point conversion, and then the safety. They did get to Jalen Hurts 3 times. They sacked him 3 times, and they were able to get pressure on him and able to convert on, let me see, the third down stats here. Third downs. They held the Eagles to 5 of 15 on third downs. Washington was 6 of 17 on third downs themselves. Fourth down efficiency, the Eagles went for it 3 times. They got 2 out of 3, and Washington was 0 for 2. 400 total yards they allowed to Philadelphia, 240 for Washington. Now, we got the spread records here. As we said, the spread records here in the NFL. I wanted to go through this a little bit. The Philadelphia Eagles, we know are 8-0, 4-0 at home, 4-0 on the road. Spread-wise, they're 5-3, but 4-0 at home, 1-3 on the road. Meanwhile, and then overs and unders, 5-3 over and under, 3-1 over and under at home, and then 2-2 on the road. They played an under the last time they played the Commanders. 4-5, the Commanders overall, 2-3 at home, 2-2 on the road. 4-4-1 against the spread. That's pretty good for a Washington team that was basically offensively challenged. 4-4-1 and 2-2 on the road in terms of against the spread. Now, this is an 11-point spread. The pass rush for Washington, we said they got to Hurts 3 times. It'll be interesting to see if they can get that same type of pass rush. Philadelphia needs to run the ball a little bit more effectively. The Eagles' defense is 3rd versus the 25th ranked offense, but the overall defense for the overall defense for the Washington Commanders, 14th overall, and I believe, if I have this right, the stats will bear it out. The stats will bear it out right now that against the run, they are in the middle of the pack. Against the pass, they are in the middle of the pack as well, too. They are in the middle of the pack as well, too. So they're not bad from the standpoint of defensive scoring. As I looked at it, I was looking at this stat. It was very interesting to me to see points allowed is where I was looking at for defense. Points allowed per game. Washington was right there. They were allowing 21.3. You know who's above them? The Minnesota Vikings are allowing 21.2 points a game. Cincinnati, another playoff team, is allowing 20.6. Jacksonville, Indianapolis is allowing 20.3. The Jets, a potential playoff team. The Giants, a potential playoff team. Tennessee, all at 18.7. Philadelphia is 3rd. They're only allowing 16.9 points a game. Offensively, Philadelphia is 4th. They're averaging, actually, Philadelphia is 2nd. They're averaging 28.1 points a game. Washington near the bottom, 2, 31, 30, 29, 20, 27th in offensive scoring at 17.7 points a game. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Offensively, total yards per game, the Eagles are 4th, 391 yards. The Washington Commanders, 25th at 323 yards in terms of total yards. Passing yards, the Eagles are a little bit down. 8th in passing at 242 yards a game. And Washington is right in the middle of the pack. They're right behind Cleveland at 215 yards passing per game. Rushing, the Eagles are down near the bottom, I believe. Where are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, they're not near the bottom. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're 6th in rushing at 148 yards a game. Washington near the middle of the pack. They're averaging 108 yards per game. So they're in the 20s. They're 22nd overall in rushing. So very interesting matchup. Defensively, here's where you make your bones defensively. Philadelphia, 3rd overall in yards allowed. Washington is very good defensively. We said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They're 14th overall in yards. Passing yards, Washington right there. They're behind the New York Giants, another playoff team. 113 yards, 217 yards allowed passing, and only 113 yards allowed rushing, which puts them in the top. That puts them in the top 14. They're 13th ahead of Denver, who's allowing 116. And then we gave you the points for and points against. So a very interesting matchup. What do you think on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter? Send me your comments. Let me know what you think. It's an 11-point spread, 43.5 the total. Now, we know the 24-8 victory. Philadelphia is rolling. We know in the middle of the year, sometimes teams have a little lull. The Eagles have not had their lull. They are only 5-3 against the spread, so they've had some tough games. They've had 10 days off since the Houston Texans. The Washington Commodores last week had their game against the Vikings. They lost 20-17. They played very well. They were on a 3-game winning streak at that point before the Vikings came in. Of course, we know how good the Vikings are playing. We'll get to the NFL Sunday here in a second. But what do you think on Facebook? I'll give you the best bet segment of what I think going on for tonight. But the 11-point spread is where we're at for Philadelphia, 43.5. All right, let's get to the NFL Sunday. Very interesting NFL Sunday. Vassy Vadaparty here with the VPartySports podcast, sponsored by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio in downtown San Jose. Come and see our live broadcast every Sunday. Receive 10% off your bill during the NFL Sunday ticket. If you mentioned the podcast, don't forget to check out happy hour specials as well. Live DJ music every night going on. Go mention to the staff that you heard the Brit Sports Pub and Patio on the VPartySports podcast, and they'll take care of you. I promise you they will. All right, we talked about Carolina the other night. They beat up on Atlanta. Atlanta now in second place in the NFC South. Yesterday, the Kansas City Chiefs did not play their best game. Patrick Mahomes had a great game, but the Kansas City Chiefs did not play their best game. They beat up on the Jacksonville Jaguars 27-17, barely covered. The line was at 10. That's a push up here, but I heard the closing line was at Kansas City minus 9.5. So if you had 9.5 and you had the Chiefs, you won. If you had Jacksonville, you had 9.5. Sorry for you, but that's a bad beat if I've ever seen one. They stay atop the AFC West by 2 games now. The Chargers lost last night in San Francisco, in Santa Clara. Patrick Mahomes had 4 touchdowns. These autocorrects here on this. Patrick Mahomes. There we go. Let's do this right. Patrick Mahomes had 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers. Trevor Lawrence had 2 touchdowns, both to Christian Kirk. 9 catches for 105 yards. The Kansas City Chiefs are now 7-2. They're 2 up on the Chargers. Meanwhile, Jacksonville falls to 3-7, and they are 1-4 on the road. The Chiefs, by the way, 4-1 at home. They did lose to Buffalo early in the year. The New York Giants. How about the New York Giants? They're 7-2. They're in second place. They're game back. 2 games back of the Eagles, actually. 2 games back of the Eagles by the loss column, but they're 7-2 after their win over the Houston Texans. Now, they don't score a lot. We know that. But defense was the key. A fumble recovery and an interception in the red zone to prevent the Texans from even getting field goals. If you had the Giants minus 5, you got that field goal late, you got off a push, and you got to cover. The under, which I had yesterday, was 41. Stayed at 40, even though the Texans had 2 chances to score. 24-60 in the final score. The defense came through with a fumble recovery and interception. Daniel Jones had 2 touchdowns to 2 different receivers. Slayton caught a long one for 54 yards. Saquon Barkley, if he's not comeback player of the year for a team that's 7-2, 152 yards rushing. 152 yards rushing. In fact, I'm trying to find out where he is team-wise here. He's second or third in the NFL in rushing right now. Derrick Henry's taking that lead. Nick Chubb second, but he's right up there. Saquon Barkley, 152 yards, 1 touchdown. Davis Mills, 319 yards, 1 touchdown, and the key interception late in the game that kept most of the Giants bettors very happy. Houston now 1-7-1, and they're a pitiful 1-4 on the road, 0-3-1 at home. They did have the tie to start the season, but how about those New York Giants? 7-2. 4-1 at home, 3-1 on the road. They are 4-0 against the AFC, by the way, as well, too. So if you want them against the AFC and they're getting points, I would jump on them the rest of the year. In the next 8 games left, as we finished halfway through the season now, 9 games gone, the second half of the season. If they play the rest of their AFC games, you'll look at them. They're going to be an underdog. If they're on the road, they'll be a small favorite because the sports wagers and the sports books are not sold on the New York Giants offense. Steelers, a 1-point underdog at home. They get the 20-10 win over the Saints. Defense picked off the former division foe, Andy Dalton, twice. The Saints committed 10 penalties. They only rushed for 29 yards. Kenny Pickett looks like he's going to be the real deal. No touchdowns, no interceptions, but he's got Najee Harris there, the product out of Alabama, to complement the Steelers offense right now. 99 yards rushing of the 217 that they ran all over the New Orleans Saints. We've seen the Saints give up big yards this year. Pickett 199 yards. They both Pittsburgh now 3-6. They're tied with Cleveland for third or last, depending on how you look at it. And then the Saints, who had an outside shot in the South with the division being so bad, they now fall to 3-7. I think their playoff hopes were gone a long time ago, but the fact that Tampa Bay only leads that division at 5-5, very interesting. And Atlanta in second place at 4-6. Tampa Bay has the tiebreaker on them, We'll get to Tampa Bay in a second. We talked about them yesterday. Probably one of the better games yesterday. The Chicago Bears, a 3-point favorite, 49 the total. They lose on a late score. The Bears do. The Lions beat them 31-30. Justin Fields was outstanding again. He threw one pick six. That tied the game at 24, but on the next series, he went 67 yards on his own for a rushing touchdown. So 2 touchdowns rushing, 2 touchdowns passing to go with the 3 touchdowns passing and 1 rushing touchdown last week. He's on a roll. And if you have him in fantasy football, I do. Justin Fields has made you some fantasy football points without a doubt. Now, neither one of these teams are going to go anywhere. Minnesota rules that division. Bears have fallen to 3-7. They made the trades. They're going to have draft capital coming in the next few years. The Detroit Lions are on a 2-game winning streak. They beat Green Bay last week. They went 91 yards in their last drive to score the game-winning touchdown and the extra point for the win, 31-30. The Lions covered the +3. They go way over 49 points. Miami Dolphins. How about this? The Miami Dolphins, 3.5-point favorite. It closed at 3 in some places. Still some people not confident in the Dolphins. They beat up on the Cleveland Browns big time. They buried them. Cleveland didn't even show up, it looked like. 39-17 the final score. 491 total yards for Miami to 297 for Cleveland. Tua, let me edit this again. I know this produced it on the fly sometimes. All right, here we go. Tua Tagovailoa, 3 touchdowns. Newly acquired Jeff Wilson Jr. from the 49ers after they traded for McCaffrey, traded him to Miami for some draft capital as well. 119 yards rushing. He led the Dolphins in rushing yesterday. In fact, the total rush yards for Miami was 195 yards rushing. The Browns only 112. Nick Chubb 63 yards rushing for the 112 for the Cleveland Browns. Now the Miami Dolphins with that win, believe it or not, the Miami Dolphins are 7-3, and guess where they are in the AFC East? 7-3 puts them in first place. They are a game ahead of the New York Jets, who are also 6-3. The Buffalo Bills are 6-3, but by virtue of the fact that Miami, they're a game up on Buffalo and New York. If they were tied, then the circumstance would be different. But the fact they have one more win gives them first place. So 7-3 for Miami, 6-3 for the Jets, 6-3 for Buffalo. Miami on a roll. They bury the Cleveland Browns. Tennessee, a 2.5-point favorite. Tennessee 6-3 now. They lead the division, the AFC South, by 2 games over the Colts. 17-10 win over the Denver Broncos. 7-2 now against the spread. 6-3 overall. The Colts won in Vegas. We'll get to them in a second. 255 yards and 2 touchdowns for Tannehill. Derrick Henry only got 53 yards, and Westbrook-Ikine, 2 touchdowns receiving. Russell Wilson had 286 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But the rush defense only allowed 65 yards. Las Vegas, a 4-point favorite over Indianapolis, 41 the total. Colts beat Vegas in Vegas, 4-point underdog. Jeff Saturday's first coaching win, 222 yards passing for Matt Ryan. By the way, did you see the run he had, the 39-yard run? That was in kinescope, slow motion footage. It just didn't look very good in terms of how pretty it was, but it was effective. It got a big first down, and the Colts hold off 25-20 on the Raiders. Jonathan Taylor was back, 147 yards rushing, 66-yard touchdown run. Derek Carr, 248 yards and 2 touchdowns. Devontae Adams, how about that? 9 catches, 126 yards, and he also got a touchdown as well too. His 8th of the year as well. The Rams in Arizona, 3-point favorite for the Rams. Both backup quarterbacks played, Colt McCoy and John Wolford. The 27-17 score was the final score there. There we go. 27-17, and the version of my backup is better than yours. My backup is better than yours. That's a pun that I heard yesterday. Both McCoy and Wolford started. Stafford and Murray out. 238 yards, a touchdown for Colt McCoy. Connor Rush for 2 touchdowns. Neither one of these teams are going anywhere as well in the NFC West right now. They're 3-6 for the Rams. Arizona 4-6. They're behind San Francisco and Seattle. The division games favor Seattle right now. They're 2-1, and the 49ers are 3-0. Both the Rams and Cardinals are both 1-3 in division. Last night, Sunday Night Football, the 49ers 7.5-point favorite over the Chargers, 45 the total. It started out at 6, went to 6.5, 7 later in the week, 7.5 by kickoff, even 8 in some places that I saw. Niners beat the Chargers 22-16. I had the Chargers at plus 7.5. They covered, moved closer to the Seahawks. Very interesting scenario toward the end. 49ers may have had a chance to get a touchdown and hurt all those Chargers wagers, but they were not able to get in with the touchdown. They kicked a field goal to make it a 6-point game. San Francisco's defense, the best defense in the NFL right now overall. They only allowed 51 yards rushing. Justin Herbert got off to a hot start, but he only ended up with 196 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The 1 interception sealed it at the end. Elijah Mitchell back now for the 49ers. So that 1-2 combination of McCaffrey and Mitchell, he had 89 yards rushing. McCaffrey 1 touchdown. Both teams at 5-4. San Francisco has the tiebreaker over Seattle. They have the tiebreaker over the Rams. They go to Mexico City next week for Monday Night Football to play the Arizona Cardinals. And the Chargers got flexed into Sunday Night Football. They will host the Chiefs in a must-win game for them to be able to stay even at arm's length of the AFC West as well, too. And then finally, the last game, we talked about it yesterday morning. Tampa Bay beats Seattle 21-16 in Germany. Tampa Bay now 5-5 leads the South. They go into a bye next week. Seattle now 6-4. They could fall into second place if San Francisco wins next week and Seattle loses. San Francisco loses. Geno Smith had 275 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Brady, the master of halting losing streaks, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Tampa Bay's defense was outstanding. Seattle got 2 touchdowns late in the game to make it close and actually had a shot and maybe coming back to cover the +3 as to where it ended up. All right, Vasi Vada Party here with the VPartySports podcast, sponsored by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio in downtown San Jose. When we come back, we'll give you our best bets, talk a little NBA, and a little best bet segment to go with that as well, too. So we're here with you every Mondays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays for the VPartySports podcast. Don't forget to check out the Brit Sports Pub and Patio for daily happy hour specials and live music at night. Of course, our Sunday podcast is there. Catch your NBA, NFL, NHL, NCAA college basketball action there as well, too. Back in 30 seconds with the final segment for the VPartySports podcast. Welcome back to the VPartySports podcast, sponsored by the Brit Sports Pub and Patio in downtown San Jose. Check out our live broadcasts every Sunday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. Mention you heard the VPartySports podcast. Get 10% off your entire bill. I'm your host, Vasi Vada Party. All right, Sunday in the NBA. How about the Knicks? The Knicks get upset at home by the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are red hot right now. The Knicks are near the bottom of the playoff ranks. They're 9th now, 6-7. They were on a little bit of a winning streak, but now they're 4-6 in their last 10. Oklahoma City is 10th in the West. They won 2-0. They're 6-4 in their last 10 as well too. The Wizards beat the Grizzlies. No John Morant. Easy pickings for the Wizards last night. The Jazz lose at Philadelphia. Jazz fall down to second. They're 5 losses now behind Portland and Denver, who have 4 losses. Phoenix behind Utah at 4 losses as well too. Tied actually with Utah in terms of winning percentage. You see the NBA lines going across tonight. We'll get to that in a second. Denver blows out the Bulls 126-103 after losing to Boston Friday night. Golden State 0-7 on the road. How about that? They're 4-1 at home, but they are 0-7 on the road. They're in 13th place, 5-8 overall, 5-1 at home, 0-7 on the road, and 3-2 in their division. But the fact is, they lost to Sacramento last night, 122-115, to fall to 5-8, 0-7 on the road. They've got a game tonight. You see at the bottom, they're going up against the San Antonio Spurs. All right, let's get to the lines here for tonight in the NBA before we get to best bets segment here. The Charlotte Hornets are a 1-point favorite at Orlando. Now, Orlando, we were talking about this. Orlando plays well at home. Sometimes they falter in the fourth quarter. They're 6-1 at home against the spread against the Charlotte team, who's 3-11 overall in regular standings. Charlotte is 4-3 on the road away, but they are 1-point favorite at Orlando. The total 225.5 in terms of overs and unders. Charlotte 7-6-1, Orlando 7-6. So not really much to go by there for that. Toronto Raptors are 4-point favorite. No Precious Achiuwa, no Cade Cunningham for the Detroit Pistons. Pretty interesting to see how the Raptors are 8-6 against the spread, 4-4 on the road, 6-6 in totals. And then Detroit at home, they are 4-3 at home. But again, no Cade Cunningham tonight as well. Miami Heat, they have a tough time. They're 3-10 overall against the spread, 2-7 at home. They're coming in against the Phoenix team. Now check Phoenix has always been pretty good when they're an underdog on the road, but check the injury report before 7 o'clock Eastern to see if Chris Paul is playing tonight. It says day to day. Miami a 2-point favorite over Phoenix, 215 the total against the spread. Phoenix this year 7-5, but 2-3 on the road away. 215 the total. Phoenix has not gotten over, 4-8 on the overs and unders, and Miami 7-6. So not really a lot to go on there. Phoenix's defense is better than Miami's right now, but Phoenix, the underdog at 2 points. But that 2-7 just sticks out to me for home spreads, home record against the spread there for the Miami Heat. Boston a 12-point spread over those hot Oklahoma City Thunder. Back to back, it's hard for me to take Oklahoma City plus 12. I would lean that way if I was going with that. Boston off their win Friday night over the Denver Nuggets. They were both 8-3 coming in. Denver played a really bad game in the third period and fourth quarter. They were able to make a comeback, try to get to that 4-point spread, but Boston a 12-point favorite. 228.5 is the total. The Clippers 9.5-point favorites at the Houston Rockets. We know Houston's bad. Houston 2-11 on the year, 1-2 at home. They played 10 games on the road and only 3 at home. How's that working out for you, Houston? Jeez. The Clippers are 7-6. They're 4-2 on the road. However, against the spread, they're 5-8 and 3-3 on the road. So 9.5-point favorite. Again, no Kawhi Leonard tonight. Jason Tate out for Houston as well. 220 the total in that game. The Clippers are 2-11. 2-11 overs versus unders. Their defense has been pretty good. They've got no Kawhi Leonard. Houston gives up a lot of points. The Houston Rockets are 7-6 on the over-under for 220. So very interesting matchup in Milwaukee tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are a 4-point favorite. They are 10-2, 7-0 at home, 3-2 on the road, 9-3 against the spread. They've already beaten Atlanta this year, 6-1 at home against the spread, 4-8 on the overs and unders. Atlanta 8-5 overall and 3-3 on the road. They are 2-4 away. One of those losses was to the Milwaukee Bucks. So it'll be interesting. And 4 seems a little low for me for Milwaukee. Again, we'll get to the best bets segment in a second. Golden State, 7.5-point favorite, back-to-back. They lost to the Kings yesterday. Last night in Sacramento, took the 2.5-hour bus ride. They're going to get ready for a San Antonio Spurs team that can score. 233 is the total. Golden State, 5-8 now. So we said 5-1 at home. 4-9 against the spread, but 3-3 against the spread at home. They are 7-4-2 overs and unders, 7 overs, 4 unders, and 2 pushes. Meanwhile, the San Antonio Spurs, 6-7, playing a lot better than I think a lot of people thought they were. 3-2 on the road, 8-5 against the spread, and 3-2 on the road versus the spread. 6-7 in their totals. They get put up with a lot of high totals, and so I think that's why they're about 500 right now. But both teams can score. We know Golden State's defense has been lousy to start the year, as evidenced by their 5-8. So it'll be interesting to see. All right. Don't forget on Thursday, We'll be back with you at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time, with a replay at 6 o'clock in the East and 3 o'clock in the West. Don't forget to check out the Brit Sports Pub and Patio, downtown San Jose, for the NBA, NCAA, NHL, all your happy hour specials as well, too. Now what you're waiting for, the world-famous, never-been-duplicated segment for Best Bets. We'll start with the NBA. Best Bet segment today, the Orlando Magic +1. I like that 6-1 at home against the spread. The Orlando Magic +1 against a 3-11 Charlotte team, who's not very good. Gordon Hayward, I think, is out for them as well tonight. Phoenix Suns, again, it's mostly Miami right now. The 2-7 at home against the spread. Phoenix still a top team in the West. Miami playing middle-of-the-road basketball. Defensively, they've been challenged. Phoenix Suns +2. Milwaukee Bucks gave you their record. Only a 4-point favorite. That seems to be low. I would check injury reports, but if you've got Giannis Antetokounmpo back and you're laying just barely over a 3-point field goal, 4 points. I know Atlanta's pretty good, but you got to think that Milwaukee Bucks are going to cover 4 points tonight. So Orlando, Phoenix, and Milwaukee in the NBA. Now the NFL. Gave you all the numbers on why Washington can play well with them. They played well with the Eagles the first time. They were down big early in that game, but the second half they shut them down. They were able to get pressure on Jalen Hurts later in the second half and in the game. Of course, Philadelphia took it a little bit easy in the second half. They built up a 24-0 lead before the Commodores even got on the board. Philadelphia 4-0 at home against the spread, 8-0 overall in real time, 4-0 at home. They've been dominating, only 5-3 overall against the spread, but 4-0 at home. 11 doesn't seem to be enough. They're going to be able to run the ball, I think, on Washington a little bit. Certainly Jalen Hurts can throw the ball, and his double threat, his dual threat of running as well. We'll go with that. So I'm going with the Eagles tonight, -11 against the Washington Commodores. And Philadelphia Eagles, -11. They'll go to 9-0. They'll go to 9-0. There'll be 2 games up still on the New York Giants, 3 up on the Cowboys in the NFC East. Washington will fall to 4-6. The Eagles will continue to have the best record, holding off the Giants and the Cowboys, as well as continue to have the best record in the NFC. Very interesting matchup tonight. Wouldn't surprise me if Washington plays well with them for a half. They have a feeling that the Eagles are going to bury them in the second half because they're just the better team. All right, that's going to do it for us, the VPartySports podcast, brought to you every Monday, Thursday, Saturdays, and Sundays. Live broadcast Sunday at the Brit Sports Pub and Patio in downtown San Jose. We'll replay this at 6 o'clock Eastern for those of you at work on the West Coast or just getting home. 6 o'clock Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thanks to everybody on those platforms for joining us, the comments, everybody out there listening and watching to us as well. We appreciate you, and we look forward to our next broadcast on Thursday afternoon, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm VPartySports. Have a great afternoon. Good luck with your games. We will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.